So when you're ready to go on passage, you're ready to go on passage, right? What could possibly make you change your mind? Hi, I'm Nika Waters, and welcome to the Boat Galley Podcast. Today, I'm sharing some tips and advice and a thought about my friend Bian Gifford on Sailing Totem's favorite mantra, which is, misery is optional. And yes, it absolutely is. Today's episode of the Boat Galley Podcast is sponsored by MantisMarine.com, maker of the Mantis Anchor, now available in models with and without a roll bar. Proven to set reliably in the most challenging bottoms, the Mantis Anchor digs like no other, making anchoring safer and boating more enjoyable. Mantis Marine brings to market practical, durable, and affordable marine products, including anchoring gear, scuba diving accessories, and a rechargeable waterproof headlamp for hands-free lighting. Visit MantisMarine.com and see for yourself. Certainly, one way to make sure that you keep misery at bay is to get your whole anchoring system dialed in, but that's probably a topic for an entire other podcast. But today, I am talking about weather. Because we've been waiting. We've been waiting for the right weather to go to the Caribbean for a while now. Now, okay, let's back that up a little bit. If you've been following along, you know we've been deep in project mode, and it's only been within the last week or so that we've actually even gotten off the hard and into the water. But as we looked and wait for a window to go to the Caribbean, I'm really reminded of my friend Bian on Sailing Totem, and if you don't follow Sailing Totem, you absolutely should. But she has this saying that she invokes frequently, which is misery is optional. And for me, it's not only a reminder that we get to choose certainly our attitudes, right? We can choose to be miserable about things, or we can choose not to. But when it comes to sailing and passage making, we can absolutely choose our circumstances, and this might be actually one of the things that could be super hard if you're just starting the cruising life, because weather completely rules everything. You know that we've been excited for this season for a long time. We are looking forward to being out of project mode. We're looking forward to being in warmer waters, enjoying snorkeling and hiking, no more need for hats and extra layers. We're headed for the islands. And we've done the ICW route a couple of times to get to the Bahamas. And we've also done one series of hops going east from the Bahamas to the Eastern Caribbean. And yes, we love the Bahamas. But it's been almost 30 years since we've explored the Caribbean other than the Dominican Republic. And we thought, cool, we've never been to Bermuda. Great, we'll go to the Caribbean via Bermuda. This was our thought way back when we were planning this season. Because the thing with doing the island hops, the bash to windward hops along the coast of the US and then the Bahamas and then east from there, is that they're hard. It's hard slogs. You're going right east, right into the wind. And so if you hop offshore, the general thinking is that you can go direct from the US East Coast to the Caribbean. It's about a 1,300-mile trip, give or take 100 miles or so if you're heading to the Leeward Islands. And that can be a little overwhelming, scary, way too big of a jump for somebody who's new. And so the idea of being able to spend most nights at anchor when you're doing that hopping from the Bahamas east to the Caribbean, that's very reassuring. Well, that 1,300 miles is definitely, that's a 10-day to 2-week trip or a little bit longer. And if we did Bermuda, it would split the trip up. It's about 600 miles the first leg, another 800 miles for the second leg. A little bit longer overall than the 1,300 miles, but shorter duration passages. Hypothetically, the idea is that you ride the back of a cold front to Bermuda, taking advantage of a shift in the wind direction. By the time you get to Bermuda, you've done most of the easting, meaning that you can do a direct shot down to the islands with the standard easterly trade winds on your beam. That sounds pretty great, but not so fast, because big picture, weather-wise, means that you're needing to thread the needle between any tropical systems. And remember that hurricane season runs officially through the end of November, and with changes in climates, we've had hurricanes and tropical systems well into December, and I think there was one in January last year. You also have winter gales that you're dealing with, and the further north you are, the more frequent those gales tend to be. It's a little bit harder to find that window to go from Bermuda down. The thing is, this time of year, and I'm recording this the middle of November, this time of year is definitely an itchy one for boats who are wanting to move. There are a lot of insurance companies that have hard and fast rules about timing and geography. A number of them say that you need to stay north of Cape Hatteras until November 1st on the east coast of the US. And there are a few rallies that have sprung up to offer a sail and company community to take advantage of that kind of timing. And rallies in general tend to be more like races where, hey, here's the start date. But one of the things that I love about one of the largest ones on the US East Coast, which is the Salty Dog Sailing Association's Caribbean Rally, is their emphasis on making your own decisions as regards to weather. They provide incredible weather routing and weather information using Chris Parker, who is a former cruiser and a long established weather forecaster. And his Caribbean Weather Center forecasting is, I highly recommend anybody who's sailing on the East Coast or Caribbean or down in the Bahamas. I highly, highly recommend you follow him, you subscribe to him, because his web forecasts with the detailed information and ideas around what's coming, and he really does a great job of explaining why these weather forecasts are the way they are. So it's an incredible learning opportunity. But I completely digress. The Salty Dog Sailing Association's Caribbean Rally is that you're leaving officially, the official start date is November 1. They have lots and lots of background information, and they start giving weather forecasts, I believe, starting like up to a week earlier than that for boats to start to take advantage of whatever window looks good for them. The thing is, this year, that November 1st start date was terrible. It was awful for leaving the U.S. East Coast. There was a frontal trough in the Eastern Caribbean, stubbornly sticking around and had been for a couple of weeks, was supposed to stick around for another couple of weeks, making eastward travel extremely challenging. And Chris is incredibly patient. And the third person on his web forecast, the third person asked him directly about leaving from Hampton or from Newport or from Beaufort, North Carolina to go directly to Antigua. He finally said, don't go. Look, you might be headed for Antigua and you might be lucky to make it as far east as Puerto Rico. And it's not impossible that you're going to be diverted to the Bahamas. Wow. This is really challenging. This is really hard. You have figured out time off work. You've rounded up crew. You've bought plane tickets home from Antigua. You've got the boat all stocked with stuff. You've gotten yourself mentally ready to be away from land for 10 days or 2 weeks. All of a sudden being told you can't go anywhere or that it's really a bad idea to go somewhere, that's a rude awakening. Really rude awakening to the realities of life afloat where weather rules everything. And not everybody in that position is going to be able to handle that. Some of them are going to give up. Some of them are going to go back to your home port. Some of them are going to change plans and head to the Bahamas. Some of them decided they were going to go down the coast of Florida. And some of them said, you know what, I'm going to go anyway. And this is where this misery is optional thing comes into play. Every single boat is different. Every crew is different. Every single decision is unique. And weather forecasts are, at best, a best estimate of what's to come. We've all had that happen. You're watching the weather even if you're land-based. And sometimes the weather is better than the forecast would have you think, and sometimes it's worse. But I think one way to look at weather forecasts and the way that you look at weather forecasts is that we look at these weather forecasts and it's like having a camera and you've got, I don't know if you remember the old cameras where you used to have these filters that you could put on. And if you want your image to look exactly like this, you have different filters that you layer on to create just exactly what you want to do. And we make weather decisions, routing, leaving, passage making decisions. We make decisions looking at that weather forecast through different filters. And sometimes there's a deadline filter. Sometimes there's a dream filter. Sometimes there's a I've raced in weather like that and did just fine filter. And sometimes those create an image that you're looking to find. Sometimes, though, I would argue that the mantra of misery is optional ought to be the biggest filter to view things through. Because choosing to go into 25 to 30 gusting 35, I don't really care what your filter is. I don't know. Well, actually, that's not true, because maybe you have a 70-foot powerboat and that kind of weather does not deter you. I'll stress again, every boat is different. Every crew is different. Every decision is unique. But we are definitely trying hard to look at our weather decisions based on the misery is optional. As I'm recording this, we're sitting at a fuel dock in Beaufort, North Carolina. Looks like we have a good weather window actually to head for the Eastern Caribbean. We know that the first day is going to be a little lumpy. We're choosing that. It doesn't sound miserable. It's 10 to 15, gusting 20, maybe 25. We know the first day is going to be a little rough. It's not going to be miserable like it would be if we'd gone 2 days ago when it was 30, 35, gusting 40. That's a misery I don't want to hit. It can be hard when you've gotten yourself all ready to go do something. It can be really hard when you're used to the deadline and timelines and dates of land-based life. But weather definitely rules all when you are cruising. And a really incredible filter to look through that is that misery is optional. I can't wait to share an anchorage with you where we're somewhere warm and not miserable, and we haven't been miserable to get there either. Thank you so much for listening to the Boat Galley podcast. We love hearing from our listeners. We love it when you don't forget to subscribe in your favorite podcast app, and we love it when you share us with your friends. Have the most spectacular day.